Welcome to KFUG Community Radio 101.1 FM and streaming online at kfugradio.org. You've tuned in to News Now, a co-production of KFUG Community Radio and Wild Rivers Outpost. We're going to tell you about some local news. Now, for KFUG Community News, I'm Persephone Rose, and I'm joined by Avi Kritz. And now, the bulky COVID-19 update you've come to expect from your favorite bi-weekly newscast. Del Norte currently has no active COVID-19 cases and can begin to resume activities associated with Stage 3 of California's Resilience Roadmap. Public Health Officer Dr. Warren Raywalt told county supervisors this last Tuesday. RV parks, campgrounds, and vacation rentals were able to welcome leisure travels on Friday. Hotels are able to operate at half capacity. Aquariums and outdoor recreation concerns, including kayak tours and guided bicycle rides, are allowed to resume. On Thursday, Raywalt issued a letter allowing for a staggered approach for moving into Stage 3, saying opening everything at once would be reckless. According to Raywalt's letter to the community, hotels will be able to resume full capacity on June 26th, while museums, galleries, and family entertainment will be able to reopen. Fitness centers can reopen July 10th. Bars can begin serving patrons on July 24th. He wrote, quote, "This will space the effect of the reintroduction of all these activities over at least the next 6 to 8 weeks. We have stratified the various activities based on what we consider to be the risk involved of reopening them and have grouped them accordingly." End quote. Raywalt's order came 3 months after the World Health Organization characterized COVID-19 as a pandemic. Del Norte County had 47 total confirmed COVID-19 cases, though as of 5:12 p.m. last Tuesday, none were active, according to the Public Health Branch. A total of 1,828 tests have been administered, according to the branch's new COVID-19 informational hub. In the past 2 months, public health workers have increased contact tracing locally and statewide. Testing capacity in Del Norte County has also increased with a new state-funded drive-thru site available to anyone for free at Del Norte High School. Appearing before the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, Raywalt discussed what resuming activities associated with Stage 3 in California's reopening roadmap would look like. Public Health were still trying to determine the best strategy for reopening. As the Public Health Branch and Del Norte County's Information Technology Department continue to add more data to the COVID-19 Information Hub, one of the features will potentially be a geographical overlay to show people where disease activity is occurring, Raywalt said. This was good news to several county supervisors, such as District 1 Representative Roger Gitlin, who has pushed for reopening almost since California Governor Gavin Newsom instituted the statewide stay-at-home order on March 19th. On Tuesday, Gitlin, noting there are currently no active cases in Del Norte County, compared the community to Curry County, which currently has 2 active COVID-19 cases. He said, quote, "Curry County is open and generating important transient tax revenue while Del Norte County remains mired in bureaucratic red tape and desperate for revenue. Many businesses will not reopen again, hurting city and county revenue streams." End quote. Raywalt said the Public Health Branch asks proprietors to go through a checklist to self-certify that they are able to meet safety measures. The business owner would display that document in their window. The business owner would then receive a second document to post in their window showing the Public Health Branch has reviewed and approved their reopening plans, Raywalt said. Raywalt again referred proprietors to the CDPH website for information pertaining to their industry. Raywalt wrote, quote, "Travel for non-essential purposes is still not encouraged, but is no longer strictly forbidden by state order. We have already seen travelers shirking the order, but we will undoubtedly see more now that the order is modified." End quote. With the community moving into uncharted territory, people should wear masks in public, stay home if they're sick, practice good hygiene, and get tested for COVID-19, Raywalt wrote. Those who are at risk for serious illness due to age or underlying health issues should continue to shelter in place, he said. You can also find a full copy of the original and revised letters linked on the article this story originated from on the Wild Rivers Outpost's website.
Students in face masks at all times, temperature checks at the school entrance, a mix of in-class and online learning. These are just some of the new protective guidelines released this past week to more than 10,000 public schools across California as they plan for a much different reopening in the fall. State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond described the 62-page document as a checklist for schools to consider. However, the recommendations illustrate a number of drastic changes that will need to be made in order for students to return to their classrooms while practicing social distancing. Many recommendations in the state's guidance are already being considered by various school districts, but education officials are questioning their practicality and whether schools have the necessary staff to operate socially distant schools. Pamela Kahn, president of the California School Nurses Organization, said guidance by state public health officials on students wearing face coverings at all times and undergoing temperature screenings is, quote, absolutely not feasible, end quote. About half of the state's school districts do not have any school nurses, she said, and in Orange County, where Kahn works, staffing ratios range from 1 nurse to 1,100 students to 1 for 10,000. In virtual school board meetings across the state, school officials are mapping out a game plan and admit they don't have all the answers. They are asking themselves what they would do in the event that a student or staff member tests positive for COVID-19. They are debating what supplies and protective equipment they need for students and teachers, pouring through survey results from families, and analyzing what possible school schedules would look like. One thing is known: the school day will be much, much different. Perhaps the most extreme measure, the state's guidance anticipates schools will adopt hybrid schedules. This means students either attend schools on select days of the week or most weekdays under staggered start times and shorter hours. Hybrid scheduling, Thurmond said, would help schools reduce their classroom sizes while accommodating parents who want to keep their children home under distance learning. Thurmond said, quote, many of our districts have surveyed their parents and have said that they would like to have the option for distance learning, end quote. The state's guidance also urges schools to consider plans for if and when campuses would have to temporarily close in the fall due to local outbreaks.
With the Del Norte economy opening back up and health guidelines altering, the question of the constitutionality, legality, and enforcement of both the governor's executive authority and the public health department's implementation of that authority has arisen in local conversation. Prior to reopening, the use of face masks in public was only recommended within our county, with other counties such as San Mateo and Sonoma requiring their residents to wear masks when they leave their homes, and some counties even fining individuals for breaking this requirement. Counties in California have the ability to be more strict in their regulation of public health than the state government, if deemed necessary by the public health officer. Any orders set by the governor are the minimum requirements for counties to contend with and follow. Now, since reopening, the use of masks in public is mandatory in Del Norte, though the local public health department has relied on community education rather than law enforcement to push the mandatory use of face masks in public areas. The county public health department has identified businesses that have violated public health orders, such as the Log Cabin Diner in Klamath. Prior to Phase 2, the couple who owns the diner was sent a letter of warning by both the county and the Yurok tribe. The warning issued by Dr. Raywalt stated that businesses violating these orders could be subject to fines and potential imprisonment. Under Health and Safety Code 120295, anyone violating the order of a health officer is guilty of a misdemeanor and could be fined between $50 and $1,000 or imprisoned for up to 90 days, or both. After the letter was sent and delivered, the owners shut down their dine-in services. State government health and safety codes give local health departments, during times of health endangerment, the ability to, quote, adopt and enforce regulations requiring strict or modified isolation or quarantine for any of the contagious, infectious, or communicable diseases, if, in the opinion of the department, the action is necessary for the protection of public health. To get an expert's take on these issues, KFUG sat down with Professor of Political Science and History at the College of the Redwoods, Will Merriweather, to explore the constitutionality and legality of these health guidelines.
A lot of the executive orders coming from the governor, I was wondering if a lot of them are constitutional, or if they've, or if the question of their constitutionality has come up at all.
So, yes and yes. The executive orders coming from the governor are perfectly constitutional. This is not the first time in the United States in which we've had a pandemic. This is not the first time in the United States in which governors have used executive orders to actually restrict movement because of public health. And when we see these executive orders, I think one of the biggest things that we kind of forget about is the damage that COVID-19 can do. So if there was a wildfire and the governor put these executive orders into place, nobody would blink an eye. They would say, of course, we may need to restrict movement, especially if people are evacuating a particular area. But because COVID-19 is a virus, we can't see it. We can't see the damage that it's doing to individuals and the potential damage that it can do, not only to our economy, but also to the population. We kind of want to go back to the way that things are. But yeah, so these executive orders are perfectly constitutional in being able to restrict gatherings and putting in the guidelines in how the state and counties can open up and reduce social distancing.
Have a lot of the executive orders, has a lot of the authorization come from the state legislature? I guess it's more of a question of basically what happened to the state legislature, because I know they did take a break.
Right. And this is going on not just in California, but across the U.S., which governors have issued executive orders. And, the states are set up very much in a federalist system in which just as Congress gives the president, the federal Congress gives the president executive power to kind of maintain public health and public order, states give governors the exact same power. And in fact, the federal government has very little role in maintaining public safety and public order inside a state. Traditionally, that has often been left to state governments. And if you look at California's constitution, those powers are granted to the executive, and the state legislatures have given governors greater executive power in times of states of emergencies to kind of fight whatever natural disaster has occurred.
Thanks again to Professor Will Merriweather of the College of the Redwoods, and thanks to Braden Hatch, who wrote this piece but could not record it at the last minute because computers are evil.
After serving more than 200,000 meals since COVID-19 shuttered schools in March, Del Norte Unified School District staff are gearing up for summer. DNUSD will serve its final breakfast and lunch of the school year via bus and at school sites on Thursday, and the district's seamless summer food program will start Monday and run through August 7th, Nutrition Services Director Deborah Kravitz told the Wild Rivers Outpost. Kravitz said, quote, "We're pretty excited about how this all worked out this year for us, in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic and some of the restrictions. We're covering more locations this summer than we have in years past, and reaching, I think, a lot more youth," end quote. 2 sets of lunches and next-day breakfasts will be served Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, via curbside locations as well as bus and van delivery, Kravitz said. This means Del Norte Unified will serve 6 meals a week to kids 0 to 18 years old, adding a Saturday breakfast and lunch to its rotation, she said. This year's curbside meal service will be offered from 10:30 a.m. to noon at Open Door Clinic at 550 East Washington Boulevard, the Family Resource Center of the Redwoods at 494 Pacific Ave, Totem Villa Apartments at 1085 US 101, and at Summer Park Apartments and Hidden Creek Apartments behind Walmart in Crescent City. Curbside service will also be available from 10:30 a.m. to noon at Bess Maxwell Elementary School, Kravitz said. Parents and guardians can pick up for youth without children being present. Del Norte Unified will also have 3 buses and a delivery truck taking breakfasts and lunches to the county's outlying communities. This includes Klamath from one end to the other, Kravitz said. The Redwood bus will deliver meals to the Fort Dick area, including Kings Valley Road, Lower Lake Road, and Pacific Shores, she said. Kravitz spoke about Pacific Shores, an undeveloped subdivision on the shores of Lake Earl. Quote, "There are a lot of youth that live out in that area. It's a pocket in the past where we feel like an underserved population may not have had access to our summer program. That bus will go out there," end quote. Another bus will head out on Parkway Drive, Sand Mine Road, and the Birch Tract area south of Crescent City. A van will head north to Smith River and cut east to Hyuchi and Gasky, Kravitz said. Though meals will be offered to anyone ages 0 to 18, parents whose children go to DNUSD schools can download the Here Comes the Bus app, which will allow them to track the vehicle that's bringing their meals, Kravitz said. The app will let parents know if the bus is running late and when their bus is approaching. For more information about the summer food program, visit the Del Norte Unified School District's website or DNUSD Nutrition Services on Facebook.
More than 100 Del Norters cared enough about ending racial injustice to show up at a second rally in Crescent City on last Sunday. "I think this is an effing turning point," Gasky resident Nancy Powers said. Powers said the rallies, demonstrations, and protests in the wake of the death of George Floyd represents the same thing protesters demanded in the 1960s when she marched with Cesar Chavez and against the Vietnam War in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district. Sean Dean, a former college advisor at Del Norte High School and a member of the NAACP, said the fact that the pandemic means people have more time on their hands may be a reason for the large turnout at a rally against racial injustices in tiny Crescent City. But, he said, he thinks they have always been opposed to racial injustice and police brutality. At the second demonstration, Dean said the NAACP chapter from Humboldt County had given him permission to distribute information on how to be a member and how they can donate. Dean, who is working with the NAACP and black student unions in Humboldt County, said at this point people are looking to take steps to change things. In Del Norte County, this includes True North Organizing Network's campaign against bullying, Dean said. Other clubs at the grade school level, such as the Gay Straight Alliance and the Indigenous People Clubs, are an avenue for taking the next step. He said, quote, "If we're asking students or people to be more inclusive, that has to be taught." End quote. Change is already happening, though it took an order from California Governor Gavin Newsom, who last Friday covered the carotid hold, also known as the chokehold, to be removed from state law enforcement training curriculum, said Crescent City Police Chief Richard Griffin. As of Friday evening, Griffin said he removed the use of the chokehold out of his department's policies. Though he knows the police department has used the chokehold before, he doesn't remember the last time it was deployed. Addressing the crowd on Sunday, Griffin assured them that he and his officers supported their cause. About halfway into the demonstration, Ana Escarcegas showed up with snacks and water for the protesters. With everyone masked, she said, she wanted to make sure they had breakfast and something to drink. For Escarcega, providing refreshment to the demonstrators was also her way of showing solidarity. She said, quote, "Seeing all the social injustices going on for centuries is devastating. This is the land of the free, and not everyone is truly free." End quote. In related news, Crescent City Mayor Blake Inscore wrote a speech in regards to these recent events through his own lens and experience, regarding the importance of talking about this in an honest manner and why doing so is difficult. It is as follows.
It has always been there. But will it always be there? A reality that is, but isn't, because it is just too hard to talk about honestly. Many have tried, some have succeeded to a degree, but it is still very real. If you have experienced it, then you understand in part. If you have perpetuated, promoted, or profited by it, then you are part of the problem. If you allow it to justify actions that you declare it has wronged you with, you are adding to the problem. What is it? What is this societal challenge that seems to be unsolvable? It is a perspective that was brought here during the age of exploration of this continent. It is a perspective that was adopted by our earliest colonists. It is a perspective on which our founding fathers based our national ideal. It is a perspective that has been challenged countless times, from Jamestown to Selma to Minneapolis. It is a perspective that has always been a part of who we are in America. It is a perspective that has defined us in the past, is defining us in the present, and given the inability or unwillingness to truly discuss it, it will continue to define us into the future. If you are a person of color and have faced it in any manner, you know the challenge of trying to change what most do not and will not understand. If you are white, like me, you face the assumption that we're it, and therefore part of the problem. It isn't unique to our culture, but it has been front and center here for centuries. Preaching has not changed it, though I personally believe that this is a spiritual problem that will never be solved without divine intervention. A civil war highlighted it, but didn't end it. It hasn't been removed by legislation or community activism. Protests have not changed it. It continues because it is real, and we as a nation have never been willing to change. It isn't Republican or Democrat or independent or any other political persuasion. It has been woven into the fabric of this country, and every time someone tries to pull at its threads, our culture begins to unravel. Then, when things quiet down, it is stitched back in place, and our nation continues to be a patchwork quilt of our own design. Sometimes, we even display our sewn together diversity as evidence that it isn't a problem anymore. But it is. Will it ever change? I don't know. And the reason I don't is because there are good people who allow it to influence their lives, often resulting in attitudes or actions that are anything but good. These aren't bad people. They are people who simply don't know how to see their world without it coloring their perspective. I'll share a story and then leave you to your own thoughts about it. We traveled to the South years ago, to the place where my family had its deepest roots. My wife and I had 2 young children who were going to meet their great-grandmother for the first time. My parents were coming, as were my siblings and their families. My father addressed an issue that I didn't know was an issue until he brought it up during the trip. I haven't forgotten his words. We just won't tell Grandma that she is black. If she thinks she's Mexican or Indian, it won't be a big deal. There were only a handful of times in my life where I questioned the words that my father spoke, and even fewer that I actually questioned out loud. I should have then, but I didn't. In an attempt to avoid conflict with his mother, my father marginalized my wife and the very real struggles that she had experienced as a person of color, and I said nothing. It was real then, just as it is now. My father wasn't a prejudiced man. He was an educator who dedicated his life to provide opportunities for children, regardless of what they looked like, where they came from, the language they were born with, or what social class they fit into. And yet, it prompted a perspective and an action that was in no way reflective of the man he was. This is the power it has over our culture. Someday, maybe, someone will find a way to get us to really talk about it. But first, you have to know what it is. Admit that it is. And then we can talk.
Crescent City councilors will likely keep the Fred Endert Municipal Pool closed through the summer, pointing to ongoing COVID-19 safety measures and an $800,000 budget shortfall for the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year. Leaving the facility closed will result in $30,000 in monthly savings, according to Crescent City Finance Director Linda Lever. City councilors urged staff to work hard to make sure the pool can reopen as soon as possible. During a budget meeting, Crescent City Mayor Blake Inscore stated that, quote, "I want to make sure we're talking about this on a meeting-by-meeting basis. What have we done? What have we learned? I want to make sure this becomes a placeholder item on every meeting, and we continue to look at any strategy that allows us to move forward with that," end quote. Councilors went into the workshop nearly a month after cutting $500,000 from the budget for the fiscal year that ends June 30th to heal the $650,000 shortfall the pandemic created. According to Lever, the reason for that budget gap and the shortfall that is expected to exist for the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year is largely due to decreases in sales tax and transient occupancy tax. According to InScore, the City Council will continue its budget discussions and is expected to adopt the budget on June 22nd. Keeping the swimming pool closed was one of several cuts to the general fund staff recommended to city councilors for the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year. Other proposals included eliminating seasonal employees and instituting staff furloughs, but at about $370,000 a year, keeping the pool closed made up the bulk of the savings.
Del Norte is offering a hybrid CERT course that will incorporate online training and hands-on skills starting June 20th. Standing for Community Emergency Response Team, CERT educates people about disaster preparedness. Using that training, CERT members can help during an emergency if professional responders are not available to help. They can also support first responders, firefighters, and other emergency personnel. CERT training focuses on disaster preparedness, fire safety and utility controls, disaster medical operations, light search and rescue operations, and victim care, disaster psychology, and terrorism and hazardous material safety. Following a course review, the final unit will include a disaster simulation according to the announcement. Online courses can be accessed from a smartphone or computer and be completed at the student's pace. Online courses take 12 hours, while in-person practical training will take 16 hours, according to the announcement. Once the online training is completed, students can print their certificate and bring it to the hands-on portion of the course. Once the practical training is completed, students will receive an official certificate. For more information about the hands-on training part of the CRT course, you can register by calling 707-951-9726 or email delnortcert@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning into News Now. To hear more episodes, check out our website, kfugradio.org, or our YouTube channel. Special thanks to Wild Rivers Outpost and Jessica Sano, Crescent City Bureau Chief, for providing great content. Tune in 2 weeks from now to KFUG Community Radio 101.1 FM and streaming online at kfugradio.org to hear more from your favorite local radio station.